Hey everyone, welcome back to Relationships Rebuilt. I'm really glad you're here for episode 2. Today we're diving into a feeling many couples experience but few talk about openly, and that's emotional distance. You know, that quiet space that grows between you and your partner, and it's not necessarily because you're fighting or arguing, but because it feels like love has somehow just slipped out of reach or diminished. Maybe you catch yourself thinking, oh, we're together but we're not really connected. Or maybe your partner seems physically close but emotionally distant. So it's almost like you're living parallel lives instead of a shared one. Now, if that sounds familiar, this is a place for you because it isn't a death sentence for your relationship. It's a sign, it's a call for connection, attention, and some work to be done. So today, let's unpack why emotional distance happens, what it really means beneath the surface, and most importantly, what you can do to start bridging that gap again. Now, first off, what is emotional distance? It's very different from conflict because when couples fight, the feelings are intense, they're loud, and really obvious, right? But emotional distance is quiet, it's subtle, and it's pretty sneaky. It doesn't slam doors or raise voices. Instead, it creeps in through silences, unspoken needs, and missed moments. Think of your relationship like a garden. A conflict is like a storm, it's noisy, disruptive, and it's sometimes necessary to clear the air. But emotional distance, on the other hand, it's like a drought. It slowly dries up the soil without much notice, and before you realize it, the garden starts to wither and die. So why does it happen? Well, it often shows up when one or both partners start to feel unsafe sharing their true feelings. Maybe past hurts, misunderstandings, or unspoken resentments have built walls instead of bridges. Or sometimes it's stress of work, kids, health, and your emotional bandwidth just gets stolen. And before you know it, you're disconnected. The good news is that emotional distance is about blame or fault. It's not about who's right or wrong. It's about what's missing and what you can bring back. So let's get really specific. What are the signs that emotional distance is present in your relationship? Let's have a look. Maybe conversations feel surface level, like you're stuck on small talk instead of being deep, or you find yourself withdrawing instead of reaching out when things get tough and covering up. Physical closeness feels mechanical, going through the motions. You avoid sharing feelings because you fear being misunderstood, or you might be feel dismissed altogether. And you catch yourself thinking about more what you need than your partner. And basically, the silence grows. It's not peaceful, but the air feels heavy and the atmosphere uncomfortable. So, if you're nodding along to any of these, then, at least awareness is the first step towards change. So, it's not about your current situation because emotional distance often tied to patterns that you formed earlier in your life. That can be attachments, styles you develop as kids, or handling conflict and vulnerability. I very commonly find that my clients who grew up in a family where emotions won't talk about caused a struggle to open up. That was me. Or maybe you learn to protect yourself by shutting down when things got hard. But you may have a different way that your partner deals with things. Um, your partner may have a different way of coping, maybe withdrawing altogether, or because they can't express what you need. So you're dancing around the problem. You're both moving further apart because you don't know how to move closer together safely. So, how do you start bridging that gap? And the good news is today I've got 3 practical steps that you can take to move forward. Enough with the why. Let's see what you can do. So, the first step you can take is to create small moments of vulnerability. And that is scary, right? It's like opening yourself up and you know you're going to get hurt. But at the same time, it's the doorway to connecting. And the important thing I tell people to do here is to start small. Share just one small feeling, a hope or a fear. It could be something just simple as saying, oh, I feel really overwhelmed by everything lately. I'm just not coping well. The important thing then is to notice how your partner responds without judging them. And, they may not even try to fix it right away, but they've heard you. The important thing here is that that small moment will build trust and let them know that it's okay to be safe. You can be open in a very safe space, both of you. Secondly, prioritizing connection over problem solving, because it really is. when that emotional distance is there, it's really tempting to just jump straight in, try and fix it. That to-do list mentality, right? But you need connection, not solutions. So what you have to do here is treat it like a project. Turn off the phone, turn off the TV, just focus on each other and literally ask a simple question. What's been in your heart lately? What can I do? What do you need from me right now? Okay, because sometimes just being seen and heard is enough to start sort of shortening the distance. And thirdly, in this, the third step, which I think often gets missed, is to recognize and respect each other's emotional styles. Now, remember we spoke about attachment and coping? Well, learning about your emotional styles can be a game changer. And by that I mean, for example, if your partner tends to withdraw when they're stressed, instead of chasing after them and trying to fix it, just give them a little space and check in later. Right? Don't abandon them, but just check in. Are you okay? We spoke about that. Now, if you're the sort of person who shuts down when you're upset, um, tell them and say, listen, just say, I need a bit of time before I can really talk about this. Don't give them the wrong signal by making them feel rejected. All right, the misunderstandings will be, they'll just pass more quickly if you do that. It's a tough one, but just tell them and be honest and say you're not coping. You need a bit of time to just process. So, a recent client, two clients, Sarah and Mike, came to me. They drifted apart over 10 years. Kids, very successful business. Um, and Mike, the husband, he particularly felt overwhelmed and he just didn't know where to start. He knew there was a problem, but he just felt every time he opened his mouth, he created more tension. We started really going forward by just creating a safe space for Sarah to express her feelings without blame. Mike would have to stay quiet, and if he couldn't deal with it, he would have to say, listen, I'm not withdrawing. I'm not rejecting you. I need to process it. And we had to practice that every week, probably for about 2 months, showing one thing each day, showing one problem each day. And there were scheduled connection check-ins, like I mentioned earlier, once a week, just basically to go through and unpack everything that they had been feeling, were afraid about, or scared to mention. Within 3 months, they really had found their way back. It wasn't perfect, but it was real and alive, and they were enjoying each other's company. So, don't be afraid to seek support. It can be very complicated. And if you're in that situation of feeling stuck or overwhelmed or not being sure where to start, getting professional help, you're not a loser. It's not a sign of failure. You're just being brave. So in this brief assessment about emotional distance, just to recap, okay, emotional distance is very, very quiet, but it is a signal. It's a need for connection, not blame. Look for signs like surface conversations where you're obviously avoiding things, withdrawal, and silence. Vulnerability, if you express that connection over even trying to solve the problem, just acknowledging there is a problem, can start closing that gap today. And I've got lots of other stories that show that healing is possible even when you've drifted well apart. And don't hesitate to get help if you need it. So as a first stage to that, even if you're lurking and you feel uneasy about seeking help, at least, if this episode resonated with you, do hit subscribe and don't miss future episodes because I'm going to keep unpacking real practical ways to rebuild your relationships. Okay, it's what I do every single day. And if you know someone who needs help, or maybe that's even your partner, share this episode and break the silence around your quiet struggle. So I'd be really grateful if you would subscribe, drop a comment below wherever you're listening to this, and maybe share what one step you're going to take this week to reconnect. I'd love to hear from you, and I do read every single message and comment. So thanks for listening to The Relationship Fix. I'm Jim McKenzie, and until next time, keep taking those small steps towards the one you love.